Welcome back, YouTubers. Today we're working on a DSM. We're converting it to all-wheel drive. This one used to be front-wheel drive. We're gonna make it all-wheel drive, and we're gonna slap some power behind it. So the first thing is first, we gotta concentrate on our rear end. So this rear end is not gonna work, obviously, because we can't mount a diff right here. So what we need to do is we need to steal a rear diff subframe from an all-wheel drive car. And what that entails is we have to convert a couple of things back here to be able to integrate that rear end. So the fuel tank for the front-wheel drive DSM isn't gonna work. This is obviously not gonna work. We have a parts car, a donor car, I should say, that we're stealing a lot of rear end stuff from. So right on the floor over here, we have our rear diff racing, our rear diff mounting, and basically with this customer, no expense was spared. So we have control arms, we have suspension, we have EDFC, we have probably another video we're gonna make is on the motor. We're building that one for 1,000 horsepower, but that'll be in another video. So to start off, we need to drop the tank, which is just a couple of bolts, and we need to drop this subframe back here. So this is gonna be 4 bolts as well, but most of the items back here is bolted to the subframe. So when doing an all-wheel drive conversion, you have to swap out the knuckles as well. The knuckles are gonna be different. We're gonna all-wheel drive knuckles. So it would just be best if you had a donor car to steal from. And the stuff that we're using is making our job a lot easier to swap in the all-wheel drive stuff.
So to make all of this a little bit easier on us, we have a Volk Racing all-wheel drive subframe kit. It's a bushing kit. Basically, it converts the rear 4 subframe bushings to billet bushings. But the cool trick about these is these weld slugs that will go in the front bushings of the subframe. So the problem with this all-wheel drive swap with a DSM, so a big problem with doing this all-wheel drive swap to a front-wheel drive chassis with 2G DSM is that the front bolts on the subframe with the front-wheel drive car don't line up to the all-wheel drive subframe. The rear bolts line up, so those will still be reused. And that's where this kit comes in handy. So these are the rear ones, and these will screw onto the factory rear studs. So the cool part about this kit that makes it easy on us is that with these rear studs, they're too short on the front-wheel drive subframe. The all-wheel drive subframe needs a much longer stud. So these will screw onto the rear stud, and then basically the subframe will go over that, and then we will bolt it from the bottom, and this will basically turn it into a stud bolt combination. So one of the big things you run into when you're doing this all-wheel drive swap with a front-wheel drive chassis is that when you go to put this all-wheel drive subframe into the rear, not all of the bolts line up. So the rear 2 bolts in the front-wheel drive subframe, they are too short, but they can be reused with this Volk Racing kit. So the rear ones will use these smaller little guys, and basically these will go and screw into, so this will hold the bushing in and the subframe. This will go in, this will screw into this stud that is in the chassis, and then there will be a bolt and a washer that comes in from the bottom and holds the subframe to the bushing. And then on the front side, since there is not a bolt that we can use, this will line up into a hole that is already drilled into the frame, and then we will weld this slug to the frame rail itself.
We have all the fuel goodies too. Full-blown dual hanger and some 4 LPH fuel pumps. So on our subframe, these are the bushings that we had to press in. That's gonna work with our all-wheel drive conversion kit. These are pressed into the subframe, and then those bolts go right here.
So on top of our Volk Racing subframe bushings, we also got these pretty Volk Racing lower control arms, and camber arms, toe arms, but all spherical. And we got rubber boots for the ends of these two to keep these spherical bushings clean and not worn out. When you get dirt in there and stuff, and these move around and stuff, it's such a tight tolerance in there where it's metal on metal, you tend to wear those out really easy. So it's a good thing we got good boots for these and stuff. They should last a long time.
What we want to do is incorporating this, like doing this all-wheel drive build, is we want to make as little cuts and as least amount of holes as possible. So we don't want to cut holes from top. We don't want to cut holes through the frame, just so we have that structural integrity.
So a couple of the big things we did here, since we're swapping from all-wheel drive to front-wheel, or since we're swapping from front-wheel drive to all-wheel drive, and we're using the all-wheel drive tank and the all-wheel drive subframe, they are going to bolt up differently to this chassis. So to start, up in here, these bolt holes, this one right here and this one right here, are for the factory front-wheel drive fuel tank, and this one that I've got out here is going to be my new bolt hole for the gas tank, and then I'm going to have another one right in this hole. And all we did here was take a little trick with some mechanics wire, and we went in through this hole and we used that hole up there to help get this bolt in there. So we didn't have to cut anything, and we didn't make any holes into the chassis for that one. And then back here, this bracket and this bracket right here are also for the fuel tank. These are both going to get drilled out with their spot welds, as I have started on this one, and they will get knocked out. And then we will put in 2 more bolt holes in these 2 holes right here. And we're going to try and use these 2 holes to get those in there, so we don't have to make any holes. Yeah, so we're going to use these 2 bolt holes back here for the rear of the tank, just to match that front one like that.
We also have to cut out a hole right here for our fuel level sending unit. We have another chassis that has a cover right here that was all drive. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to make a template of that new casing that goes right here, and then we're going to steal these guys from the old car and see if we can basically make it as close to OE as possible.
So with our Volk Racing subframe kit, these ones being our back ones, these will go on these rear subframe bolts back here. So these are, as you can see, fairly short from looking at it. This will screw onto here after this is out of here, obviously, and then this will go in through the bushing. So once the subframe is mocked up here, this will go through, screw onto that stud, and then there will be another bolt that comes in from the bottom with a washer that will hold the subframe in right there. And then this one for the front, since that all-wheel drive subframe is a little bit bigger, that front bolt ends up lining up right here. And so this will get put right here once we mock up the subframe, make sure everything fits well. And then we'll weld these to the frame. So you have to sand everything down, make sure it's nice and clean. And then this will get welded on this big outside edge and hold that in there really well. And then it'll give us a bolt hole to be able to bolt our subframe in.
Just to give you guys an idea of what our engine bay is going to look like. So we're going to keep this foam back here, just to give you guys an idea of how clean this harness is going to be. This is our Ohm Racing mil-spec harness. So our original harness came from this hole right here, but this harness does have an option to come out of this hole, but we wanted to make it as clean as possible. So I had to drill out this hole right here, and we have our mil-spec connector. Pretty nice. Nice little quick disconnect if I can get it, maybe. Come and bear with me. Maybe not. Okay, anyways, cut that part out. Interesting. Nothing? Nothing. Thanks for watching, guys. That's the end of it for today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of the Subaru or the DSM. Maybe a little bit about that Integra, because that thing will blow both of these out of the water. Peace!